And I would like to introduce our wonderful expert speakers, dear Lucy and Elliot. Should we call you dear Elliot? No. And Elliot the Wonderful. And we will be they will be presenting on tips for caregivers of Alzheimer's and related dementia patients. So I would like to introduce them because you need to know how incredible these two people are. Dr. Elliot Montgomery Sklar is a public health professional with 2 decades of experience in supporting the health of the public through academic work, research, and service. He has led healthy aging programs for seniors and for caregivers in Canada, Florida, and online for anybody who wants to see him. His research is focused on the complexity of issues related to aging and caregiving. Dr. Sklar is an associate professor of healthcare sciences at Nova Southeastern University in Florida. He also recently published research in the American Journal of Occupational Therapy, the Journal of Applied Gerontology, and the Journal of Social Services Research on themes related to our program. Our dear Lucy Barylak has a master's degree in social work from McGill University. She's presently working as a consultant for a health network in Montreal, Canada. She's been involved in various research projects and has published numerous articles related to caregiving issues. She has lectured at several universities and colleges on innovative approaches to caregiving and presents annually at international and national conferences. Lucy is also a consultant for private industry in the United States, including her work with the WellMed Charitable Foundation and their clinics in Texas. Additionally, Lucy would like you to know that she was a caregiver for her own mom for about 10 years. And with that, welcome to you both. We're so happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much. And thank you for that great intro. I, again, want to welcome everyone today. We're excited to be providing our presentation today, which is titled What Caregivers Can Do. And really the focus today is on the can. It's an exciting program, which I think is also a bit unique. You know, often our focus is to support caregivers by acknowledging the challenges inherent with the role of caregiving. I think as caregivers and as healthcare workers, we can often get caught up in focusing on things that are negative or difficult or out of our control. Really, that's human nature. We are more used to thinking of what we cannot do rather than what we can. So again, our focus is on the can, and that is why it is in bold here. I'm like stumbling on my words today. Caregiving is an emotional journey, often because I think of the close relationships that we have with our care recipients. It's a very intimate thing to be providing care. And in addition, many elements of caregiving, as I said, are out of our control, like the decline of someone's health, which is difficult, I think, at the best of times. Now, when our care recipients' health declines, which is the nature of many progressive illnesses, that can also have an impact on us. The pandemic, I think, really brought to light many of these issues, and I hope will be a catalyst for change, because we really need to recognize and appreciate and empower our caregivers, not only with programs like we're providing today, but also with policies and programs in place that are supportive of the critical role that caregivers play. Research on caregiving has focused on reducing caregiver burden, but really very little attention in the research has been focused or looked at promoting positive aspects of caregiving. And so today, our session is to really focus on those positives, and there are many. So I wanted to invite some participation, and I wanted to ask if anyone in the audience knows who the person in these photos are. You can enter it in the chat box. You can feel free to chime in. I recognize these are old photos.
I don't know.
Anyone? I guess.
Marilyn Monroe.
Can I guess? Oh, somebody said it.
Angelina said Marilyn Monroe, and that is absolutely correct.
Wow.
The reason that I'm sharing this is intentional. This past year, there have been a number of movies and documentaries about Marilyn Monroe. I would say probably in the last year, year and a half. And I learned actually that how she came to fame is that Fox Studios had staged a publicity photography shoot and a fictitious biography for Marilyn Monroe back in the early 40s to state that she was discovered as a caregiver while babysitting for a Fox talent agent. And these were actually the staged photos used to prove this story. But that was actually not how, of course, we know now that she came to fame. The reason that I'm sharing this is think of all of that effort that went into concocting this story about her being a caregiver. Now, of course, yes, she's not caregiving for an older person here. She's caregiving for children, but nevertheless, it is still providing care. And I think it's important for us to sort of take a moment and think about the fact that one of the biggest icons of all time in Hollywood was positioned in this way to make her more likable to the public. That was why she was identified as a caregiver. And the concept of providing care was a very positive association then. Now, in these photos, as I said, she's caring for babies, not someone who's old or who's sick. But, I think it's just a very different way that caregiving is positioned. I don't think many celebrities today would be positioned in such an obvious way. So I was just curious to again get input from our participants. If you feel like providing care today has that same positive association in our society.
So you can unmute your phone by pressing *6. You can use the chat room or the hand up, excuse me, or unmute yourself. I have a website where I can see. So Darlene Myers would like to talk to us.
Oh, I did. I'm sorry. I was just saying, it said, do you feel like providing care is valuable in our society? Yes. Yes, I do. Because like he was saying, there's all kinds of caregivers. To me, Alzheimer's is kind of new on the horizon, but it always existed. And just trying to get others to understand more so what their roles are as a caregiver, to mostly live in their world and at the same time take care of themselves.
Well put.
Absolutely. Great comments. Thank you so much for your insight there.
Anyone else? Well, those of us who've worked with caregivers and with patients, we certainly appreciate caregivers.
So I hope that for those participating or perhaps watching this at a later point, let this be a reminder to let a caregiver know how much you do appreciate what they do. And exactly what you just said, Evelyn. Now, I wanted to go a little bit deeper here and ask, who values the care that you provide?
That for the audience?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, folks.
Lots of audience interaction today. We're even going to do a little exercise later.
Oh, cool. All right, just unmute your phone by pressing *6, or open up your line if you're on Zoom. But you can use the chat room. You can put your hand up. You can just unmute yourself, and I can see it on my little fancy website here.
And Dorsey said this is National Caregivers Month. Yes, it certainly is. So does that mean that nationally we value caregivers or the care that is provided by caregivers?
I hope so.
I think there's been a change, I must say, from the early days in the early 90s when I started thinking about this. We didn't call them caregivers. They were just a lot of really elderly women more than anyone that came across. And so I think there is a movement. There's been a lot of moving forward. There's still a lot more to do. But I think people now recognize what the word caregiver means.
Absolutely. I think, again, as I was saying earlier, the pandemic certainly brought that to light for many of us, because at one point or another, we were maybe a caregiver to ourselves in terms of our coping and our resilience, but perhaps we were caring for someone who might have been ill or delivering groceries or things like that. It struck me, you know, as a university professor, having worked in higher education in the United States my entire career, how few university campuses have resources dedicated to providing support for students that are caregivers. And research shows that about 1 in 9 caregivers are a full-time student. So, you know, I think certainly in healthcare, which is the field in which I teach, we really need to create environments that promote care. And that begins with the college campus and valuing, I think, the work of caregivers. It sets an excellent model to the students who will become future healthcare professionals. So I'll get off my soapbox and we'll continue. but you know, I always learn from the input of our audience, and that's why we ask these questions too, because it's really just meant to engage some learning for all of us. So I'm curious, for people who are caregivers who might be in the audience, professional or family caregivers, if you can complete this sentence: I am grateful to be whomever's caregiver because. And I'd like everyone participating to think about that. Think about it in relation to a person or a client for whom you're providing care. We're going to circle back on this in our program. But I was curious to know if there's anyone who would like to share their completed sentence. I think different people find different value in their role as a caregiver.
And as you said, it's very intimate. So I can understand why people may be reluctant to share.
Well, maybe I can share. Is that okay, Elliot?
Of course, absolutely.
You know, I was very grateful to be a caregiver to my mother, because it was my way of giving back to her, being a single mom and taking care of me and all that she gave me. It wasn't always easy. We won't go into that, but I have to say that now that she's no longer with me, I feel very grateful that I had the opportunity to do that for her as an only child.
Thank you for sharing that. That's, I think you used a lot of key words: opportunity, grateful. And I think a lot of people can certainly relate to that.
Darlene would like to talk to us again.
I wanted to answer. I am grateful that I was able to care for my mother as well, for the helping my siblings through this journey. And with that, I ended up working professionally as a caregiver, supporting the care receivers and the caregivers at the same time. I truly, truly enjoy giving support, giving them ideas, making them laugh through the journey that can help them. And basically, like I said,
Oops,
What happened to Darlene?
I didn't do it. Come on back, Darlene.
I really appreciated so much of what she was sharing.
I'm sorry.
There you are. Welcome.
I'm back. I got a bad connection. I'm not at home.
No
but,
worries.
You know, like I said, I professionally help people during their caregiving journey.
And I want to thank you for the work that you've done as a caregiver and the work that you're doing professionally to support caregivers. I was just saying while you were disconnected for a moment there, how much I appreciated your sharing of your experience and your journey. Thank you.
And it's obvious how you're feeling and how much you know about the process and the journey.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else to get on? Okay.
All right.
So maybe we'll move forward. Alzheimer's and dementia caregiving, we all know, can be really tough because you lose the relationship and the interpersonal psychological bond with that person in many ways. You may also find your role in the relationship has changed. These diseases, the process that they go through are a lot of physical needs that caregivers has to provide in additional to managing emotional around the relationships, along with everyday life and responsibilities. So there are negative and challenges, and the goal of our program and sharing of information is not to discount this at all. It's quite the opposite. This is part of the process of acceptance. When I say that, what is acceptance? Acceptance is necessary for your healing process. To practice acceptance, you must acknowledge all the uncomfortable parts of yourselves, your emotion, your thoughts, and your past. Positive aspects of caregiving, there was a recent review in 2019, examined more than 50 studies to explore how positive aspects of caregiving can have a benefit on your own well-being. That included personal growth, gratitude, mastery, finding meaning, knowing that your loved one is getting good care, letting go of anger and guilt. I want to share with you that my turning point in my caregiving journey was really when I finally accepted that my mother was not who she was before at this point, and realized that she was no longer the person who she was before dementia. Once I accepted her limitations, our relationship became even stronger. My acceptance really released me from all the negative feelings, and I could kind of move on in a positive way. So I know it's easy to say that, but being able to accept the person where they are is the beginning process of moving forward.
Well said. Does anyone have any comments or questions about that? Because I think acceptance is such an important component of the process, I think, of caregiving.
You can unmute your phone by pressing *6 or unmute yourself on Zoom. Use the chat box, put your hand up, and I can call on you. A tricky little website here.
Makes me think of the stages of grief, actually, and how the first one is denial. And what is the opposite of denial? It's acceptance. And I think that that's, again, so important for caregivers to, to recognize whatever the condition might be and what comes along with it. But acceptance allows you to, I think, move forward in as positive a way as possible. Well, speaking of moving forward and moving, I want to talk about one of my favorite things, which is exercise. I think that when caregivers are healthier and feel better about themselves, then we have a greater inner reserve from which to draw upon to care for others. And really, our focus today is on caring for yourself, because, like I was saying, if you don't care for yourself, and this is a silly analogy, but then I find you're like one-ply toilet paper. You don't really serve anyone effectively, and it's not very comfortable. So we really want to strengthen our reserves, and exercise is a great way of doing that. And that's why I've always believed in the power of health behavior. It's really been the cornerstone of all of my academic work, my research. When we engage in behaviors that support our health, we're showing ourselves care. And we're, I think, being our best selves. Now, this isn't to say that I don't like my wine and cake, but I also strongly believe in the power of nutrition and exercise. Exercise certainly provides an outlet, I think. Unfortunately, there's no magic cure for the demands of caregiving. And one of the things that I understand many caregivers face is a lack of time. So we're going to talk about some ways to integrate caregiving perhaps to do with your care recipient, and things that you can consider doing at home as you're working. Research has certainly found that caregivers have great health benefits and stress relief from everything from yoga to running marathons. And I thought that that was quite astonishing. There was a study on caregivers who had engaged in marathon running and how reaching their own goals helped them to have better perspective about their role as caregivers. So for caregivers struggling to find simple ways to fit activity into your daily routine, here are a couple of suggestions that can certainly have an impact on your overall well-being. Now, the first one is yoga and meditation. Now, we know that stretching and strengthening muscles while also calming our breath is good for everyone. But a recent study of Alzheimer's caregivers that was completed by UCLA found that meditative yoga practiced regularly for 8 weeks showed an improvement in depressive symptoms in 65% of caregivers. So I think that's quite astounding. You can also look online and you can practice from home. There are virtual classes, and on our next slide, we'll have a link to some of them. Walking is another wonderful physical activity that doesn't require equipment or extreme exertion, and it can have significant health impacts. A regular routine of walking, which can start as little as 10 to 15 minutes a few times a week and increase, can help to reduce blood pressure, raise good cholesterol, reduce body fat, and most importantly to me, giving your mind a chance to relax. There's a lot of research that shows that walking in nature is very, very beneficial for our mental health. Some caregivers, and I thought that this was very interesting actually, because to me it would cause me more stress, is to know that they have a regular break to look forward to. And that can be achieved by participating in regular exercise classes that are scheduled. So that can include everything from a dance class to water aerobics at a community center. It helps caregivers to get a break and have something to look forward to. But this does require respite. So this is something that you need to consider, and that's why I was surprised that the research found that this was very helpful for a number of caregivers. It wouldn't have been my go-to. I would have thought of things to do at home with your care recipient, but it makes sense to me. It is important to have something to look forward to and that you know that you have respite and you're doing it just for yourself. So, you know, you can also, an idea that was suggested in that research was to have a friend or family member fill in for you for an hour or two while you do that exercise class. If you can't afford to pay for respite, that was a great idea. Same with adult day centers. There's also great exercise that can be done at home. And we have a link below. I'm not going to go to the website, but it is from the National Institute on Aging. They have exercise videos on YouTube that are pretty short, that are very clear and have examples of things that you can do, but they're specifically designed for physical limitations and for also aging. So I actually found a number of these videos very beneficial because they focus on stretching. People have chronic health issues. If you have a bad back, they have videos and things you can do. And everyone is different. We have to find things that work for us. So, you know, a lot of caregivers find that the ability to exercise at home, and even during the pandemic, we've talked about Lucy dancing around her apartment. These things are very helpful for our mental and our physical health. Care recipients can also benefit from exercise. And so it is a very good consideration to think about doing things with your care recipient. One example is actually throwing a balloon to one another. And that's a great thing that you can do really easily. And I love that I'm just throwing an imaginary balloon, but that's a very easy thing that you can do at home while you're watching TV. And it just helps with balance and coordination. And I think it's so important that we not forget about our care recipients when we are thinking of exercise. It's really important for everybody to move around as much as we can safely. And that's why I also am a big fan of these YouTube videos from the National Institute on Aging. If you have a smart TV, you can actually access it right on your home television. And here I also have posted a bunch of chair exercises, which can be really helpful. Now, I imagine most of you, like me, are sitting right now. So I'm going to ask if you feel comfortable and if you don't have any health limitations, we're going to do a chair exercise. So if you're seated right now, I'd love you to try it with me. All right. So all we're going to do is lift our feet an inch or two off of the floor. Now, in doing so, do you feel your thighs engaged in a different way than when your feet were on the ground? Yes. Great. All right. Now, if you don't have any hip issues and you want to add a bit more challenge, okay, you can put your feet together. Now move them apart. Now move them together. Now move them apart. It's a great exercise. You can also, with your feet parallel and just an inch or two off the ground, bring your heels together, toes separated in a V, and then now your toes together and your heels separated. Do you feel how that's working different parts of your thighs?
I can see Darcy's face. What's going on there?
And your calves.
It's much more challenging than you would think it to be, right? But you're just sitting, and just the motion of lifting your feet off of the ground engages all those muscles in our glutes, which is our behind, and also in our quads, which is our thighs. So these are great exercises that you can do sitting down. They're very simple, and you can access a ton of them by just clicking on the link that's on the slide that we will be sharing with everyone. So if you like that, definitely visit that website. I think I got that from there, and also mixed with some of the things that I've learned from Pilates, which I'm a huge fan of because it really focuses on balance and coordination. And it has also been shown to prevent falls. So now let's not forget about nutrition. Can't have good physical activity if you don't also nourish your body. And I don't know if people know this, but most of us are chronically dehydrated. So I know that I often drink tea or coffee as we're doing our sessions. This is not a beer, it is an iced green tea.
Oh, sure.
But water is so important, and most of us don't realize also that caffeinated beverages can dehydrate us further. So dehydration can lead to headaches. It's actually one of the #1 causes of headaches, imbalance, fatigue. All of these things are very important for caregivers and care recipients. Someone with dementia, for example, may become dehydrated and be unable to communicate properly or recognize that they're thirsty if they forget to drink. So again, this can lead to headaches and increased confusion, urinary tract infections too, and constipation, which is a chronic issue with people with dementia and Alzheimer's. It can make the symptoms of dementia worse. So I love this idea of these reusable water bottles, and I just posted a photo here of one that I found on Amazon. One of them even has little motivational sayings. You did it, you're almost finished, don't give up. So I just like the idea of having a bottle like this because it helps you to know how much you've actually been drinking. And it also makes it fun. You can get different colored straws. You can also get flavor infusions for putting lemon or fruit in the water. They're really inexpensive. You can get them on Amazon, even at your grocery store. But it's just another example of practicing something together. And I think that that's an important thing that caregivers get in the habit of, trying to exercise with your loved one, trying to drink more water with them. All these things have a benefit for all of us, not just for ourselves. And often we think that our care recipients maybe are not part of when we say that we need to exercise more. They really are. So some of our participants might have heard of the MIND diet, which has been linked in some studies of Alzheimer's patients to slow cognitive decline. Now, there's no formal research linking the MIND diet with reversing Alzheimer's. There's also plenty of evidence, though, showing a connection between diet and prevention of progressive illnesses. There has been a recent study that was just out to say that that no dietary changes have an impact on Alzheimer's, but I personally don't really believe that to be true. I think that we know that Alzheimer's and related dementia is a progressive illness, and these changes in the body start decades before symptoms begin. But I'll bring up a little bit of research to support why I believe what I do. Now, the MIND diet, just to talk a little bit more about it for those of you who don't know, it's an acronym that stands for the Mediterranean-Intervention for Neurodegenerative Delay. So it's a hybrid of the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet. And some research actually shows that it may reduce the risk of developing dementia or slow the decline of brain health. And there was a very large study in the Journal of Alzheimer's and Dementia on the diet and its impact. It focuses on an increased intake of plant-based foods, limiting animal products and foods high in saturated fat. And the emphasis is really on plants. And what's noteworthy is that the diet specifically urges higher consumption of berries and green leafy vegetables. So blueberries, kale, things like that. And we have a list here of the MIND diet do's and don'ts. You don't have to worry about writing stuff down. We're going to provide a copy of our handouts. But fueling up with flavonoid-rich foods may indeed help the mind. Blueberries, as I said, strawberries, and blackberries appear to prevent cognitive aging. And likewise, there is a connection between eating leafy green vegetables like kale, spinach, collard greens with lower inflammation and oxidative stress. But don't have the collard greens with lots of ham hocks. Two factors associated with Alzheimer's disease and are actually inflammation and oxidative stress. So that's why this is so interesting. And there's another study about this that was published in the Journal of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics about the consumption of foods rich in antioxidants to help inflammation and oxidative stress. And that is actually one of the reasons why what I have here is not beer, but iced green tea, because green tea is very high in antioxidants. There's also been a lot of research published about diet and memory, and one of the studies was looking at selenium and memory. And the study showed strong evidence that selenium improved cognition. But here's the catch. Don't go out and buy selenium supplements, because too much selenium can actually be very harmful. But an excellent source of selenium in food are Brazil nuts. So it's very important to speak with your doctor and ask for a consult with a nutritionist, if possible, if you have that available and covered. There's no harm in trying to eat healthier, and it will benefit not only yourself, but also your loved one. Now, I know also that for some people with Alzheimer's disease, proper nutrition can be a challenge for a number of different reasons. But there are a lot of creative ways that you can integrate these ingredients in a covert way. For example, like in smoothies, I've switched to eating kale Caesar salads that I really enjoy instead of eating it with romaine. These are just small examples, but you know, that's also, smoothies are a great way to increase hydration too. So that's something that is successful for some people. Now, again, I bring up the fact that you may have seen some conflicting findings in the news about the role of exercise and nutrition in preventing dementia and Alzheimer's. Notably, things like the diet that I'm talking about right here, that it doesn't work. But what I am very interested in, and I have been, if you have people here heard of the blue zones? So the blue zones are 7 areas in the world where people live the longest and with the least amount of chronic illnesses. And the only place that we have here in North America, actually, that is a blue zone is Loma Linda, California. Now, back in 2008, Loma Linda University Medical Center data showed that less than 5% of their older patients had dementia. Something that is still studied today, because when the researchers went to communities right next door to Loma Linda, they saw markedly increased rates of dementia and stroke. But patients living in Loma Linda have a very different lifestyle than the average American. The majority are Seventh-day Adventists. They mostly eat vegetarian meals. They exercise regularly. They have strong family ties and community connections. So the blue zones show a lot about our relationship between health behavior and our health. And because there's no conclusive research that can be done on the role of exercise and nutrition in preventing cognitive decline, because we don't live in a vacuum, there is a lot of research that I think is shown in practice. And the blue zones, to me, is a great example of it. Other blue zones exist in Japan, in southern Italy, where people do eat, for example, in southern Italy, a more Mediterranean diet. So, these things are actually living out in real life in communities around the world. And I think that it's important that we try to engage our physical activity and our nutrition as best as we can with those that we love, including ourselves, most importantly. So I wanted to ask if anyone had any comments or any questions, because some of this is a little bit controversial.
But very interesting. So folks, just press *6 or unmute yourself, go to the chat room, raise your hand. We would love to hear from you.
One of the reasons why I became a vegetarian, actually. I do eat fish and seafood, so pescatarian, I guess. But there's just so much research that the blue zone areas, it just made me decide that I wanted to change how I was living my life. Couldn't hurt.
Right.
For sure not. Well, that was extremely interesting, Elliot, I have to say. And just to share with all of you, I haven't had meat or, red meat or lamb or ham and all that in over 50 years. But at the time, I didn't know that I was doing it. For me, it was just the idea of it. But I do want to say that, change is very difficult. And I truly believe in the whole notion of prevention. I believe that people need to take responsibilities for their own health and well-being. Going to doctors is very important, but taking pills is many times not necessary. And any small change that you could do for yourself is extremely helpful. And I have to say that even when you said the 15 minutes of walking a day, you'd be surprised, or even, 3 times a week, what a difference that will make. My issue is drinking water. I'm not a big drinker of water, so I'm going to get one of those bottles. I like what it said on it. I need inspiration. That's for sure, to drink water. I do want to talk about a study that was published in the journal Health of Psychology, looking at the caregivers of people with dementia and positive coping skills. Okay, so caregivers participated in a program and received video calls every week where a facilitator taught them skills, for example, like noticing positive events. Okay, making you very conscious, being aware of the good things in your life, not focusing on the negative. And, that's important. We always say that, but it's not easy to do. So I'm going to give you these little tips, and maybe you can try it, at least one, and see if you can move forward. Also identifying positive events in your day. What went well during the day? A way of, it's a way of extending and savoring your good feelings, such as by telling someone, it's good. Tell somebody, I had a great day today, and tell them why. Write them down or remember the event later. One of the things that I do every night is before I go to sleep, I kind of go through my day to make sure that my cognitive functioning is working properly. So I start by asking myself, okay, when I got up, what did I do? And I go through it. And then I really try to go through the day and see what good happened that day, what positive thing remained with me. Mindfulness, that's really important. Being aware of the present moment without judgment, okay? Participant learned a guide, mindfulness breathing exercises, and incorporating mindfulness in their daily activities, believe it or not, like brushing your teeth and washing dishes. So what does that mean? It means that being mindful, okay, I'm brushing my teeth now, being in the moment, I'm washing the dishes, and not letting your mind wander to negative things. Recognizing your personal strength, okay, that was another skill and tool. Seeing the cup half full rather than half empty. And looking at your personal strengths as well as the personal resources you have at your disposal. All the good things that are happening, all the good things that you do have. We talked a little bit about that during COVID, Elliot, and I remember saying that I was grateful to have running hot and cold water, that I had a roof over my head, that I had food to eat, that my family and friends were still safe. So it does take a little bit of effort, but it's something, these are really, it really works. You need to set attaining goals. So what do I mean? That are not challenging or really difficult. Goals that should be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic. For example, if you're a caregiver and it's time to give your loved one a shower, if they're having a bad day, maybe you'll wait until tomorrow. Okay, like your goals should be achievable and not add more pressure onto yourself. These skills help caregivers feel more in control of their responsibilities and better able to manage in general. That's part of the study results. As caregivers, it's important to try to practice these on a daily basis. Maybe, as I said before, start with one every day. Maybe keep these on a little post-it. You can put it somewhere that only you can see it and remind yourself, focus on the good things. Practice gratitude. Open yourself to humor. Spend time with positive people. Sometimes when you're, good friends or even relatives that are negative can create that negativity in yourself as well. It's not always easy, but limit those relationships as much as you can. Practice positive self-talk. Talk positively about yourself. Don't only, focus on the negative part. So, these are all things that you can do. Let other people know that you appreciate them for what they do, especially caregivers. So if you know any caregivers, tell them, pat them on the back and tell them you did a great job today. That positive feeling of really engaging in that. And it's filtering through your day and allowing yourself that every time you go to a negative aspect, bring yourself back to the positive aspect. So having said a lot, and I'm just wondering, has anybody practiced any of that? And I would love to hear from the audience if you have any other little tips that you could share for us. And that would be very helpful.
I want to just chime in for one moment because I am sitting here as I've been listening to you, and this came together in my head, and I'm thinking, as we were doing those chair exercises, I was very aware of how my thighs felt. So that's your mindfulness right there. And then I felt, glad that I was able to do that. So again, if you're thinking about this, lift your feet up 1 or 2 inches from the ground as you're sharing your tips. And I want to congratulate everyone for your exercise today. And thank you for the work that you do.
So anybody, can you contribute here? We'd love to hear from you. We'd like to hear some tips that you might have. I know once I retire, sorry.
I said, keep lifting those feet.
Yeah, right. One of the things I've been doing since I'm retired, and I'm not always in a hurry when I'm driving, is to always motion to other people to go first at a stop sign. And they're always like, oh, thanks. And it's just, I think kindness, is part of, being positive, because then you feel good about you get good feedback from other people.
Absolutely.
Very
Paying it forward.
That's very true, Evelyn. When you feel your blood pressure going up, just take a big breath, let it out and say, I'm not going there. I'm going to let the guy go first. Go ahead. That's a very good point.
Anybody else? Help us out here. Love your input. I think they're shy, don't want to brag on the good things that they've done.
Well, we're usually, as I was saying at the top of the hour, it's human nature to think of all the negatives, but it's a lot more difficult to pay ourselves compliments and think about positives. So really, that's one of our takeaways from our program today. And with that, I will continue and say, that practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes progress. And I think that that's so important, because it is not easy to make these kinds of changes. And it is a habit. One thing that can be helpful for some people is maybe not for others, and we're all different. And certainly the experience of caregiving for someone with Alzheimer's and dementia is not going to be a walk in the park every day. But that's why it's so important to try and live in the moment. And that is, I think, what exercise teaches me. When my feet are raised those 2 inches up and I'm feeling how my thighs are feeling, I can't wait for that to stop. So I am thinking of that time and living in that moment. But it is, for me, exercise really is the best practice of living in the moment. And there will be good times, not so good times, but I think we have to cling on to those good times with all of our might. And as I was saying, that can be very different for everyone. For me right now, it's when our 16-year-old dog can make it to his pee-pee pad in time. So happy moments mean different things depending on different circumstances. But when people have short-term memory loss, their lives really are made up of moments. And I think it's important that we remember that if we can. We are not always able to create perfectly wonderful days, for example, for people with Alzheimer's or related dementia, but we can create perfectly wonderful moments, moments that might put a smile on their face or a twinkle in their eyes. And 5 minutes later, they maybe won't remember what was said or what made them smile, but it's that feeling that we then get from leaving them with that experience, that moment. And I really do believe the same is true for us. And that's why I say practice makes progress. It doesn't make perfect. Perfect doesn't really need to exist. So I want to encourage everyone to take a moment to think about things that you can do, and even maybe write down one happy moment with your care recipient that resonated in your day. And if you make a practice of that for a week or routinely, just put those little notes in a drawer somewhere and look at what the sum of those experiences looks like. I know that it seems a little trite, but it's a practice that really does change how we view perspective and what it is that we focus upon. So I want to ask you, Lucy, when we're not feeling positive, when we're just not in the mood, what should we do?
Very good question. I think I've been saying it all along. First, acknowledge your feelings and try to understand where those feelings are coming from. It's okay to have a bad day. The purpose behind all of it is to be able to really identify our feelings and make sure that we have the skills and the tools to kind of get us through that moment. So this is what we're talking about. It's how do we do it? So I would definitely go back to the idea that when you're experiencing something stressful right now, feeling upset is totally appropriate. For example, if you get bad news from a doctor or you aren't feeling well, are you going to get even more upset with the situation because you can't see a positive in it? Maybe. But in that moment is where some self-compassion would be most appreciated. Self-compassion is being warm and understanding towards yourself rather than feeling inadequate or having low self-esteem. So it's, giving yourself a big hug. It's not something many of us think about. Self-compassion can be an extremely positive habit to nurture that doesn't have to do with smiles or with anything, positive. Just be aware, as we talked about, be in the moment, give yourself a hug, give yourself some credit. The other thing is gratitude can be similar. For example, we can be grateful for our resilience, our strengths in the face of bad news, or for our ability to have support, all the support we need to cope and get through any situation. So, it's saying a lot, but at the same time, you need, and we always tell that to caregivers, but even if you're not a caregiver, you need to care for yourself. You need to feel that you're a good person. Value yourself. Look at what you have accomplished. Like our first presenter, it was Marilyn, I think, who said that just the fact that she gives back to others, how that makes you feel. And Elliot, when you were talking about, we tried to do a research project on participants, caregivers who had dementia, who are coming to a day center doing activities, to measure if really coming to the activities, how does it help their quality of life? It was very hard to measure, but what we did realize is very much what you said, that even if it's for 2 minutes, if that person appears to be happy and enjoying themselves for 2 minutes, it's worth it.
Elliot, your idea of writing stuff down, I'm not a person who writes stuff down. I always have a worry box that I put over to the side at night, think about all the things I didn't get resolved or I worry about. And I love Lucy's idea of kind of that mental journaling at night, where you go through your day and, identify your feelings and, how the day went for you.
Absolutely. There are different things that work for different people. I've never been someone who writes little things down like that, and I thought it was really cheesy. But I practiced it for a couple of weeks, and I appreciated actually the ability to review all the things that I was thinking about, that I was grateful for in that period prior, because it made me see that there was a common theme. And that really was the relationships that I have, and also my own resilience, and that when I was feeling badly, I pushed myself, I went to the gym, it made me feel better, stuff like that. So we want to thank all of the caregivers who participated today for everything that you do, because we're practicing what we preach. And so with that, I want to leave you with the resources that you already have within. Where it's a different take on our resources today, because I think we have more resources within than we necessarily realize. We will be providing a copy of our presentation to everyone, along with that link to the National Institute on Aging videos, exercise videos. And we do have the number here for WellMed Charitable Foundation and the Caregiver SOS. But we have a couple of minutes. Evelyn, I know you always have some important announcements of upcoming programs. And if anyone has any last questions or comments, we're certainly open to them.
Let's see, we have a hand up. Go ahead.
I think it's an applause.
Oh, thank you. Shows you what I know.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes. And so those resources will be sent out in several days with your post-session questionnaire. This is really important to us. I hope you guys, will take, maybe not every time that you listen in, but every once in a while, really spend some time on that post-session questionnaire, because it helps us improve all the time. Now, if you were not registered for today, you won't get those resources in the post-session questionnaire. So what I will ask you to do is to call the WellMed Charitable Foundation's customer service representative at 866-390-6491. So I know sometimes we get information from a friend or family member about these sessions, but again, you have to be registered to get the resources. And you'll also then get the monthly calendar, which is pretty fabulous, because we always have the list of expert speakers that staff at the WellMed Charitable Foundation have contacted and asked to present to us. let's see, next Thursday, or tomorrow, we're having Dr. Tam Cummings, who's a great expert in dementia care. We have on Monday, Modern Caregiving for Modern Millennials with guess who? Dr. Elliot Montgomery Sklar and Samara Yesovich. Is that right?
Samara Yesovich, yes.
Samara Yesovich, thank you. And then Tuesday, we have a presentation in Spanish, how to prepare for celebration. Anyway, it's a Spanish presentation. I'm sorry, I didn't get translated yet. And then the following Monday on the 14th, managing the holiday challenges of family caregivers. And on the 15th, which will be our last one for the month, because it's such a busy holiday month, we have Dear Lucy, dementia and inappropriate sexual behavior. So please, we hope to see you again soon. I want to thank you all for what you do. I'd like to thank our expert presenters who spend a lot of time doing research and writing this and doing that fabulous PowerPoint. I'm so jealous, Elliot. And I'd like to thank the WellMed Charitable Foundation because they have done such a fine job in recording these, in scheduling the experts, and in really caring about the caregivers. So thank you all. I'm going to stop the recording. We hope to see you again soon.
Thanks everyone so much. Thank you, Evelyn. Everyone have a
Thank you.
great day.
Thank you.